Dave Corinth here. Welcome to my shop. Today I want to share with you something that I found on eBay a while back. I'm always looking for ways to make restoring these old planes a lot easier, and I came across these two little nuts that make taking the threaded stud off the back of a frog a whole lot easier. Now you may be asking yourself, why on God's green earth would I want to remove this threaded rod? Well, it's a lot easier to clean it if the rod's off. These threads at the very bottom are very difficult to get cleaned off if it's still on the frog. But once you remove it, you can take it over to a wire wheel and really clean it up and get it to work like it should. Or the threads may be damaged from sitting in a toolbox and getting toolbox dings up against the threads. Or it could have been sitting in a damp basement or a garage and they just got pitted. Either way, you want these threads to be clean. The brass adjustment knob that threads onto this rod should operate smoothly. This allows you to adjust the iron in or out depending on the depth of the cut that you want. And you should be able to move this with one finger. It shouldn't be tight. So sometimes cleaning these threads is necessary. And this tool that I have found, or not really a tool, but these two little nuts that I found makes it a whole lot easier. And these are those nuts. You can get them in steel like this set, or you can get them in brass like this set. Both of them are 9/32, 24 threads per inch, left-handed. Starting on the Type 6, this threaded rod was no longer right-handed, it became left-handed. Now the way I used to take these off was I would thread one of these brass adjustment knobs all the way down as far as I could get it, and then I would thread a second one down, tighten them up. It's sometimes using a pair of pliers to do that, and then turning this direction. But in this case, you can see, I don't know if you can see that or not, but I haven't tightened that down super tight, but it slips. This is a common occurrence when you're trying this, is that these two just won't mate good enough to really get that off there without taking a pair of pliers and really damaging these. So to remove the stud off of this old number 3 frog, the first thing I'm going to do is thread one of these nuts down about 3/4 of the way, counterclockwise. Now the threads on this old rod are kind of gummed up, so I have to use the wrench to get it started. But once I get to where the original brass adjuster is at, it threads on by hand. And then I'm going to thread the second nut on top of that one. I then turn the first nut that I put on clockwise until it seats up against the second nut. I then use two 7/16 wrenches in the opposite direction to snug those nuts together. I then set the wrench on the bottom nut, turn clockwise. A lot of times I like to wiggle these back and forth to make sure it breaks loose. And this one broke loose pretty easy. And once it's broke loose, all I have to do is turn it off there. In this case, I was able to finish it off by hand. Now I can clean this thing up easily on a wire wheel. To remove the nuts from the threaded rod, use 2 wrenches, and all you have to do is turn the bottom nut counterclockwise, and this will break them free. And then you can remove each nut one at a time. After I clean the threaded rod on a wire wheel, now it's time to reinstall it. And all I do is thread it counterclockwise onto the frog as far as I can by hand, and then repeat the same process that was done earlier, only this time we're going to tighten that studded rod onto the frog instead of taking it off. I'm going to use the 2 wrenches again to tighten those nuts tight up against each other. And you want to make sure these are pretty snug. And then instead of doing on the bottom nut, this time I'm going to use the top nut and turn counterclockwise to thread that rod into the frog. And having the ability to use a wrench on this really lets you seat that studded rod into that frog nice and snug. You don't want that threaded rod to come loose while you're using this plane. And to remove the nuts, all you have to do is use the 2 wrenches, and this time turn the top bolt clockwise, and that'll break it free. Then you can remove them by hand. Since these are now clean, it's easy to remove these nuts off of that threaded rod. No wrench necessary to get them off there. I've also found these work on other planes as well. This is a Miller's Falls number 37 block plane, and its depth adjuster has the exact same thread, pitch, and size. So all you have to do is remove the brass adjustment wheel on the back and repeat the same process that was used on the bench plane frog. So any plane that has a 9/32, 24 threads per inch adjustment rod, these nuts will work on, and that includes the Miller's Falls block planes and bench planes, as well as the Miller's Falls made block planes and bench planes, like the Craftsman's and Dunlap's. And of course, any plane made by Stanley. And this includes the King Cutter and Winchester lines that modeled after the Bedrocks, those block planes that were made by Stanley for King Cutter and Winchester, as well as the Wardmaster and Wardmaster Lakesides, and the early Revenox and the later Union planes made by Stanley. So this isn't just limited to a Stanley bench plane frog. And for restoration work, it'll make it a lot easier to refinish the body if that threaded rod is off there. So if you want a set of these, you can go to eBay and look for his user ID, KGish. And again, he sells them in steel and brass. And if you're a Midwest Tool Collectors Association member, he'll give you a 10% discount rebate. I'm always looking for ways to make restoring planes easier. And this set of nuts for removing the adjustment rod on a frog or a block plane definitely makes it easier. I hope this video was helpful. Please comment, like, and subscribe, and I'll make more. Thank you for watching.